Hey everybody, welcome to the Improv Network. I'm your host Bob Wick, and today we got something special for you. We're going to abandon our usual format and give you a clip show. James and I have been going through our many hours of shows to find some of our favorite clips. Unfortunately, we couldn't show you everything we love. There's just too much. So we found a good chunk, and we hope you find it entertaining and inspirational and all that good stuff. Just a quick reminder, if you're enjoying the show, please comment. This conversation between me and James is for everyone, so we want to hear your input. Also, check out the Improv Network. It's a great resource. Go to the improvnetwork.org, not .net, not .com, .org. We're an organization, and there's so many cool resources. We have blogs. We have a listing of all the, God willing, all the improv festivals coming up, and we have old shows. Our whole catalog is on this site, so check it out. We'll love to hear from you. We hope you enjoy everything and enjoy the clips.
I'm so excited to finally be here and not just be lurking and watching. It's great.
Yeah, it's and
we
it
appreciate both. We appreciate both.
It's true. Yeah, can't go wrong.
Who are we doing it for if it's not the lurkers?
If it's not me quietly on my phone, yeah.
That's how this is meant to be consumed. Quietly in some weird spot with your phone, no one around, just me and James just talking sweet prov to you.
And then that's perfect for me.
Sweet prov. And our Hey, Bob.
Hey, James. How you doing?
Doing good, man. Okay, so we are sitting down to have a conversation about a topic. We were in the Marco Polo app, sending videos back and forth, and you made a suggestion of having an improv FAQ episode on group games, which I thought was a really great idea. And then we started chit-chatting about it, and we thought it would be fun to record a conversation just kind of going over why that would be a great topic, and maybe even flesh out some ideas along the way to answer the frequently asked questions about group games. So the first thing I thought we could do is kind of define what group games are, what we're talking about, but also, because in general, I guess as a little preamble here, there's a lot of shit in improv vocab that is confusing, which we were kind of talking about as a side topic. And game is one of them. Yeah. Because I mean, you got short form games and game of the scene and group games.
Your character game, like a personal game that only your character plays.
Yep. You can have a game of the show. You can have like beats of a game, your
form itself can be a game, So.
Yeah. I was also just thinking, I was working on an episode about long form forms and being pissed off that long form is the style of improv, and that the sub performance packages that we have are called forms. It's like we don't say short form games like.
Oh, just think about the word beats. The beats of a scene. Beats is a measurement of time, or something you'd call an event.
Yeah.
Oh, give it a couple of beats, or give it that pregnant pause.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a whole life. Like, come I'll be right back. I'm so sorry.
No, edit.
Well, what stinks about that is I was just gonna say, like, Jill has an amazing ability to play in her one person show, right? She has a slew of characters.
Yeah.
She has all these characters that she brings out. And the thing is that she's able to remember them, sustain them, and give the audience a real life connection to those characters. We like really like them, we really hate them, or we cheer for them, whatever. But if you notice, if you've ever seen her show, she's not doing anything very far away from her, right? She's not like, even if her accent changes a little, it's not a caricature. These things, these characters that she's bringing out aren't caricatures. She really is like, this is this person's point of view. This is this person's want in the world. She sustains those characters in her body. And even if you're playing, a short form game and you're picking a character, if you can take a note out of Jill's one person show page, it's like, to sustain, how can you choose a character? How can you become instead of trying to be or trying to act like?
Yeah.
No, I like that.
Yeah.
It is also so funny that she's not here.
I know. Jill.
Let's talk about her more while she's not here.
But I agree, and that really is like, I feel very comfortable playing like the straight character, and sometimes I will have what I feel is a strong character with like just like a strong three-dimensional character that I feel like is not me, but I don't know, I don't always have a handle on like what it is that's making it work. So are there things for like students that are interested in this type of character work, not just playing so close to self, but like balanced between making strong choices but keeping it real and three-dimensional? Are there like kind of starting places or fundamentals that you hammer into new students to that world?
I have tons of things to say about it, but Jill is back, and Jill, if you could, we were talking about Drum Machine, your one-person show.
While I was away?
Yeah, of course we were. Why wouldn't we do that? It was a perfect time. But I was saying that so I want to marry this question with Drum Machine, right? Because what you're asking, James, is do you have any sort of tips as to how to create a three-dimensional character, sustain a three-dimensional character? And I was saying, Jill, that in Drum Machine, the characters that you become aren't super far away from yourself. They're not caricatures. They seem to be three-dimensional people. Can you talk a little bit about how you would, tell people how to do that, or coach them how to do that?
I believe in investing in the cartoon. If you look at the characters, like my own background is from comedy sports, you too, which is very much like, right? Like a very, because our scenes are so short, you don't need to have a character that you can live in forever. So I come from a background, actually, and then I've married it by thinking about some Commedia dell'arte and some Marx Brothers. So a lot of what I know how to do to create a character is exterior work, something I'm laying on, something I'm doing with my body physically in an exterior way. Yeah. And then to fill that exoskeleton, to invest in that cartoon, to fill it with a real heart. My stock characters, I like biscuits. But the example I like to give is, I like biscuits. At least I did before my wife died. And then we can play with that cartoon for real. We can treat that cartoon person, like a real person.
Mm-hmm.
When people talk about fuck world, what does that term mean to you?
When people talk to me about it, it's typically given a negative connotation. Like, I don't know, what do I do when the scene goes to fuck world? How do I get out of fuck world? It tends to be a negative. And I've always considered it a positive. Well, I mean, grounded, everything we do has to be grounded, right? There's certain bedrock principles of a scene. And the problem, right, like the very essence of like why we call it fuck world is that people feel lost and they think it's just crazy town. And that usually always happens because someone in the scene has gone to fuck world within the first 2 lines instead of establishing the basics, right? Relationship, character, and then developing fuck world. The issue usually means shit's gone crazy. I don't know what's going on. This is fuck world. I don't like it.
Yeah, because it's pretty much like it's named fuck world. I guess I don't have proof of this, but like it's like, oh fuck, or what the fuck.
Or like
fuck world.
God damn it, Jeremy. Like, why are we here?
Yeah, why are we doing this?
Why?
But
I knew where we were going until you said that, and now I'm uncomfortable.
Yeah,
right.
So but Gary, you're saying that like it's definitely, yeah, something. If it happens right out the gate, is probably one of the trickier places to be because you don't have a lot else to. You got to do a lot of work immediately to frame things, or not get out of panic mode in order to make any use of it. If the first couple lines are, oh fuck.
Well, right, and that's usually because someone's trying to be funny or trying to be creative, or nervous and just says like whatever weird thing comes into their brain because they think it'll be interesting, and then what do you do with it? And so people tend to not like it. And when people talk to me about it, again, it's like, usually it's always like, how do I get out of it? How do I fix it? And I think the reason we all enjoy it and can play in it is because, A, we don't want to fix it. We want to dive into it and figure out this new world. It's a fuck world because it doesn't follow reality, right? Like up is down and right is left or whatever. But I always reframe it like this. You are coming at it from an internal actor point of view, right? I don't know what's going on. Reframe it as an audience point of view. Does the audience know what's going on? If you don't know what's going on, they certainly don't know what's going on, even if they have more headspace than we do. So I always say, hey, it's super hard to go to fuck world in the first 3 lines because you've not established anything that you can play off of. I don't know who you are. I don't know who I am. Where the hell are we? Why are you saying this weird shit? If you think about it from an audience standpoint, like just start normal. And normal just is always what? Character, relationship. And I always treat it like a graph, right? Like if you're going into fuck world, you have to take the audience with you. And so when you enter fuck world, the audience can follow you because they know who you are. They know who you are to each other, or maybe where you are. And then when you start twisting reality, they can understand it because they've seen the creation of it.
Yeah, you got to hold the audience's hand, and sometimes you have to hold like your scene partner's hand.
Yeah, I that's something that's been a big theme to me in the last couple of years, is the audience being part of the show. I've just been thinking about it in a different way. It's like you're not doing this in a vacuum, and unlike scripted theater, it wasn't prepared to be delivered.
Yeah.
So the journey of sometimes I feel like it's maybe a separate conversation about like how to treat the audience and whether or not to quote unquote hold their hand in the way that sometimes people are like you don't want to confuse them, like the audience are dumbasses, but it's not hold their hand in the sense that like we're all in this, including you. Everyone in this actual room is part of the experience of this show unfolding, and so the holding hand is not like condescending or like don't get lost, you dumbasses.
No. There's a difference between holding hands and going over and picking the person up and carrying them through the whole thing.
We don't need to be God on the beach.
No, it's that thing. We're even with object work and everything we're doing, we're asking the audience to suspend their disbelief. So with that in mind, we have to build this thing for them because they haven't been trained. They're not, right. Especially if they're a new audience who's never seen improv before. We have to show them like, hey, there's not going to be props, or we're not doing sketch. We're making this all up, and we're going to take our time, do it right, so you understand what we're doing, so you can see it as well. We have to make that connection. You got to know what's going on, your scene partner and the audience.
That's the fun part of Fuck World is you hold their hand at the beginning, establish the things that you need to establish so that the people on stage can function in a scenic way, and you hold the audience's hand, to use Bob's term, and then at some point you let them go. And like enjoy this new world while you're floating in it, because this is not, hey, we're at Applebee's scene, And then the other thing I like about Fuck World is you can do anything in improv. Why would you want to sit in a chair and be at Applebee's in every scene?
But tell me about the Freeform that Big Bang does. Like, what is it? How would you describe it? Like, what does your description of show look like when you do go on the road?
So it's one of my absolute favorite styles of improv to perform by far. I think that it exists in many, like some people might call it organic, some people might call it something else. But the way that we sort of describe it when we're teaching is it's free. I think a lot of times people think that Freeform is just like a montage, but it's not. It's kind of like a method of deconstruction where like any scene on stage can be deconstructed into a million different other ideas or scenes or moments and then followed. So it's really like a follow the funny type form, where you are creating the form as you go. And so every show doesn't only have unique scenes, but kind of has a unique form as well.
Cool. That's awesome.
Yeah. It's so fun.
I love, so Bob and I are on a team with another friend of ours, Gary, and the team's called Javelin.
I thought you were going to forget Gary's name for like a second.
Some dude that we know.
Yeah.
But I got tripped up on how to say it, like whose name is Gary, a friend of ours, and his name is Gary. But our friend Gary and the two of us are a trio, and we try to make a rule for ourselves when we play of like the first part of the show is anything but a scene, and then we don't use sweep edits for the rest of the show. That's really what defines our form as a challenge to do other stuff. And we try to play around with like transformative edits and like surrealism and non-scenic things. Is that in line with the kind of stuff that happens with Big Bang?
Yeah. It's so funny. Yeah, well, there's no sweep edits. And in fact, like I did improv as a child. And so I like grew up doing like short form improv. And then when I went to I'm actually from around New York area, but I moved to Boston after college. And when I went to Boston and started doing improv there, I sort of learned long form like as I went, like on the spot. And because I was working with Will, I didn't even know what a sweep edit was. And I like moved to New York at 31 after doing improv for many, many years. And I was like, why are people just like running across the stage, and like it just felt so.
That's wild.
I know, it felt so hacky to me, which is ridiculous now because obviously I understand the sweep edit, but like we only did what made like, I guess like some people call them pivots, some people call them transitional edits. Like they're always like in the moment. There's and one of the things I love about Big Bang is because we really see all of those moments as part of the show. And so sometimes when you do like a sweep edit, it's almost like you're like, okay, pause the improv for a second. We're going to sweep across the stage. Pretend we didn't do that. It's like you didn't see that. And now we're resetting and now the scene is back on. And like, it's almost like showing the puppet strings or whatever. Yes. Where we more are like every single moment, including the transitions, are part of the show and are interesting. And like when we teach the form, which Will primarily teaches the form, but a bunch of us do when we do festivals and stuff. It's really teaching like all of the different kinds of transitions you can do, which are based on like what you're inspired by in the scene. So like if someone just like said something funny, like you might do like some kind of verbal edit. But if someone like
a steel line type edit or
exactly. Yeah. You could do something like that. Or like a good example that we use is like my friend Paul Dome. He's been in the cast forever as well. He was in a show. I don't think I was in this show, but someone on stage was like doing a scene that was pretty like real, and someone was like, about a breakup, and someone said, I miss her smell, and then Paul edited with a character named Mr. Smell. And I feel like that's a good example of like, who knows what's going to happen, right? Where it's like, I missed her smell turned into I'm Mr. Smell, the superhero. But you could also be inspired by something else. It could be physical. It could be kind of anything at all.
Do you guys have like a easy go-to way that you describe game to students or anyone else?
My go-to is always to break down the cowbell sketch from SNL. And because it's very like everybody knows that sketch, first of all.
That's a good one, yeah.
And it's really set up like a group scene. They set up the world, they introduce the characters, they build the parameters, and then just like UCB talks about, that first unusual thing is the first time he hits the cowbell and you see the reaction. They do it again, you see a heightened reaction, and then everybody in the room is on board. You know exactly what's going to happen, and it's still funny each time to see how mad they get, how weird Christopher Walken gets, how out of line Will Ferrell gets. So it's this just repeating cycle of the same bit, just a little bit zanier every time. That I found has really helped people kind of, because it's an esoteric, it's a hard idea to grasp your head around when you're speaking about it. So
that's funny. I usually use the Chocolate Factory scene from I Love Lucy, because it's such a simple game and it has all the factors. Well, first, you know who Lucy is as a character. Today's different because she's working in a factory, and then you discover the device of she's in front of a conveyor belt, and conveyor belts can do a bunch of stuff. It can slow down, it can go faster. So proximity to the conveyor belt and the shelf. There's a buzzer every time the chocolate comes down, and just it's such a simple game of picking up a piece of chocolate, putting it in the box, putting the box on the shelf, picking up, and then all these little factors start getting heightened. So the conveyor goes faster, the bell starts ringing faster. It gets so fast that she can't do the simple game of putting it in the box and putting it on the shelf. So she starts eating it.
Mouth.
And then until she can't do that anymore. So it's a gradual heightening, and it's such a simple premise. That's what I love about it. There's really, the one where she eats the chocolate. we all know it. It's so simple. You can break it down in a sentence. So it has all the contributing factors of what makes a game fun and interesting, like a simple establishment, a simple pattern, and then the heightening of.
Yeah, that's a good example too. Yeah. I think a lot of times people refuse to believe that a game can be as simple as it is. A lot of times, they don't trust themselves that a simple idea can be explored and heightened in a really fun, creative way. So they always feel the need to push more onto the scene, and that's when you lose it.
Yeah, I was just talking to a friend who is not a comedy person, but they were saying, they were like, I don't think I could ever do improv because, like, what if you have to do a scene with someone and you hate all their ideas? And I was like, then you'll hate the whole thing. That's the whole thing. Sometimes someone has an idea and it's not good, but you have to make it good. And you have like a few minutes to do that. So I can't imagine being like, we're at the zoo? No. Nope.
Nope. Okay. Well, let's not work the zoo. I don't want to do that either. Okay. And I've seen those scenes happen, and I feel bad for everybody in that room. And I think that's why, like, basically just piggybacking what you both said, we are so strict in the beginning of this process. So, like, just say yes, and then also say the word and, which is the and part, I think, can be tough for people as well. Because I agree, it's a good acting tool, but it's also a confidence builder. Because if you're not comfortable, it's so easy to say no. So as soon as you have a couple of rounds of I have to say yes because that is my job, and it goes somewhere, then you feel a little more confident. Well, okay, I shouldn't judge this because I judged the past 5 and I was wrong. So I might not be the best judge, and I should just go along with it until something grows.
Yeah, I never thought about it like that. I always think of like, oh, it's like shorthand for a concept, but I've never thought of it as training wheels. Like it's just what you have to go by for the first however long you're improvising until you're like, okay, then now I can think about yes anding less.
To become free range.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah. No more training wheels.
Yeah.
And that was important too, because this energy I left after 5 days at the annoyance changed me who I was as a performer. They do say you get so full of the annoyance energy, you kind of have to let it sit and dissipate, and you take on, what works for you. Also around this time, 08, 09 was when I got put onto a Herald team at the ITC, and it was called Standards and Practices. Now, at the time, it was like 10 or 12 people. And slowly, people left and things happened. And we were performing weekly until it came down to the 4 of us, Matt Folliott, Cameron Algie, Kevin Whalen, and myself. And we had known for a while that was the core 4. And that became, one of the reasons that it's one of those things. I love Michael Jordan so much, and Michael Jordan would always play with people in their 40s when he was growing up, because he always played against people who were way better than him. So with those guys, it was like I was always playing with people who were better than me, because they're so talented and our group mind was so tight. And I, for the first time, was allowed to do the things. They made me look good. And I could be even bigger than I was and physical and out, and they would make everything look beautiful.
You have this amazing safety net when you are playing with people that much more experienced than you, or, like you said, playing with people that you feel are better than you. Is you're like, well, I can swing for the fences when I'm doing this and go through a lot of, especially if you're sitting on that annoyance energy and you're like, I gotta release this and kind of find my way, and but do it with a team in a setting that's not going to damage relationships or create tension, I imagine that is a great way to let out a lot of that playing style and grow with a team like that.
Huge. And that team too, you know, even when we had more people, we had a real important, no offense here, come to Jesus meeting. Was sorry, Bob.
I'm so mad right now. So mad.
It was really beautiful meeting we had. We had a lot of issues with the coach, one of the players, the guy who runs the company, blah, blah, blah. Where we had this beautiful meeting where we went around the table and said to everybody, like 10 people, like, what do you want for yourself? You know, what can we do for you as a team? What do you want more on stage from yourself and from the team? We went around and, you know, we all heard each other out. And then the next show is goddamn amazing, where everybody was given everything they wanted. I wanted to fly more, you know, so they picked me up at the end of the show and they all raised me and I was flying in the air. It was so much joy. It was incredible. And, you know, Cameron, we have a lovely, because Cameron said, yeah, I just don't want to do what I'm doing. So I just want to be new Cameron from now on. And so, okay, well, new Cam. So he just changed and started doing whatever it is he wanted to do differently from that.
Oh my God. That's amazing.
He just said, yeah, I don't like what I'm doing, so I just want to be new Cam. And I'm like,
can I ask, did you notice the difference between old Cam and new Cam?
Yeah, dude.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I just had this thought, like, I'm new Cam, like, I don't see the difference.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, I love it.
Oh no, freedom, man. When you allow somebody freedom, it's a beautiful thing, and that freedom ties into the clown.
But I really do try to. I think that's something that comes with either immediate skill, those, you know, new improvisers who start out and they're just raw talent when it comes to improv, or I think it takes years to kind of be good at playing in the moment, because I think we all have so many ideas, and when you're on stage, the general you as the improviser, you think what you're going to say is going to be the funniest thing. That's going to be the thing that tears the house down. It's going to be the most TJ and Dave-esque moment. So many of us think that while we're on stage, but it's not.
True.
Yeah.
I love this.
Yeah. This is going to be great.
And then it flops. And I feel like those moments when stuff flops, it's because we're not listening to our scene partner. And that is the struggle of staying in the moment, is like listening and responding to what the last thing you just heard was, not the idea that you had on the sidelines. And then you come back out and you're like, but, and then you do your thing and it doesn't make sense with what your teammates have been doing. So and those moves, when you do stay in the moment, in my experience, when you do stay in the moment and you do celebrate your teammate's idea by building on it, rather than saying, you know, drilling in with your idea, those are the more successful shows.
Okay, so I'm gonna jump. So a white man asked me once, like, how can is it possible for me to, how can I be Black on stage? So was his question. And I was like, what do you mean? And he said then, well, I can't play your Black husband. And we had just come off a show together. He was like, I can't play your Black husband. And my immediate response was, why not? I play your white wife all the time. Like, right? Like, I do it all the time. In my, like, obviously I'm looking at you. I don't know. I play a white woman. It's fine. It's very easy. Now, why is it easy? Because I believe in the character that I am playing. I don't have to walk on stage and say, I'm a white woman. Like, I don't have to do that. And neither does that young man have to walk on stage and say, I'm now a Black man, or however Black men talk, I guess. But like, no, I said it's okay for me to watch that scene. It's okay for me to do it. Like, all right, so.
I would watch that scene.
All right, well, no, but that believing in your shit, the belief is really what it is. It's like, if you are in a scene and really you want to be a horse or a unicorn or whatever, if you believe like, yes, I have a rainbow tail and my fur sparkles, and when I speak, rainbows come out and like stars shoot out of my eyes, and you can like like really feel it in your body. But yes, and then the other part about that, Jill, is there's a interesting thing to me that happens off stage, right? So the idea that you told that woman, basically you said, believe in yourself, right? Mm-hmm. You have to believe in yourself. Anything you say is correct. And to come from a space outside of improv where either everything I say is wrong or everything I say is questioned, or there's no reason to believe in myself because there's an actual answer. I don't have to believe I'm a horse. I can look in the mirror and I see I'm not a horse. Or I don't have to believe that I'm going to get this raise. I can't just believe it. I have to work for it and then the raise will come or whatever. We're like socialized to understand that belief isn't real. And so for you to tell her, no, if you hold your hand like this, you automatically have a hot dog in it. You know what's in your hand. What is it? Like, tell us. Or who are you? You tell us. Like, I think that's such a disconnect. It's so interesting to hear that story. And then to come around and to tell young improvisers, the click of it is believe in your head. Sure, you can do all the things in your body, and then you have to stick the landing here before you can stick it out there.
You could tell when you see an improviser who's pretending to be a child, you can tell if they know any actual children.
Yeah.
Or teenagers. Teenagers get such a rough go in improv because they're always portrayed by people who either don't honestly remember what it's like to be a teenager, right, or have no respect for teenagers, or have a teenager in their life that they're looking at through a very small, unfair window. Mm-hmm. Oh, did you ever read A Very Small Unfair Window? It was such a beautiful book. But people.
Is that real, or are you just believing your own shit?
That's my own shit.
I love it.
You can tell when an improviser doesn't know any children. Yeah. You can tell when an improviser doesn't know any teenagers, and you can tell when an improviser doesn't know any Black men. Or have never met a thought about someone in a sophisticated, layered way.
Right.
Well, I've got some thoughts.
Cool.
I've got some thoughts, certainly.
Yeah.
Well, let's start here with the initial getting of the suggestion. Oftentimes when I'm teaching my students, I remind them that is a great time to kind of show your personality. And it's also a great place to maybe burn a couple suggestions you're sick of. Because one thing I don't like to watch is an improviser attack an audience member for their suggestion. So let's just start there. That'll be the first thing I address. And you guys, I'm sure, have seen this where someone says, like, we have a location, and someone yells out, inevitably, bathroom, right, is usually one of the big ones. And then you've maybe seen an improviser go, oh, very creative, right, or something like that.
Yeah,
I hate that, because you don't want the audience member driving home going like, why did I say bathroom? I'm such an idiot. You know, it's just not my favorite. So first and foremost, let's talk top of the show. I think that it's great to come out, have great energy, not be dismissive, be yourself. And if there are suggestions that you want to burn them. As in, can I have a suggestion of a location, like a Starbucks or a bathroom, but not those? I do that.
Yeah.
Or I also tell my students to, and I incorporate this as well, don't just ask for a suggestion of anything, because that also opens you up for the gross suggestions and blah, 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 right? So if you give them kind of a box, that usually helps. Can I have a suggestion of a location, an emotion, something you find at a hospital, a kitchen, whatever, right?
Yeah.
Conversely, if you're on a team and you're on stage on a back line, you're also going to want to remember to have some stage presence there as well. you don't want to be on the back line if a scene's going maybe a little rough and your face is like this.
Totally. Yeah.
Yeah. Because you're
And
part of the stage picture. Yes.
I remember a student once editing a scene and had the cockiest little run, like, let me get us out of this kind of run around. And at the note session, I was like, don't ever do that again. Who the hell do you think you are?
Yeah.
You know, you gotta kind of just, if the show is burning, crashing and burning, and you see me on the back line, I'm like this.
Yeah,
Right?
totally. You're like, yeah.
In my head, I'm like, this is not going well, but in my face is neutral to delighted.
Yeah.
Okay?
Yeah.
So what I'm hearing from that is that one of the first things that is a good thing just in general stage presence for an improviser to learn is that you want to avoid being douchey and that like you really have an opportunity to present because we're not like going off stage for a lot of it and dressing up and being in character for all of it. You want to make sure that you're staying as like a available, positive presence on stage.
Yes.
Accessible. Yeah.
It's in the phrasing, James and Bob. Stage presence. You're on stage.
No.
That's the presence.
And this conversation actually reminds me of this reminds me of something you told me when I was coming up, because you were both my first and third teacher. When you're hosting it as if you're hosting a party and you're greeting people, don't be douchey. Like
yes,
that's stuck.
Lovely. Yeah.
Yeah, you said it.
You don't have to do a type 5. You don't have to come out there and do a type 5, but you can come out, if you guys have ever seen me when I come out, I'm like, hello, hi, welcome. We're happy you're here. We're going to do a show. We're going to make everything up on the spot. Nothing has been planned for those people in the audience who maybe don't understand what the hell's going on.
Right.
And I always avoid, if we're doing a podcast about this, I can vent some of these tiny frustrations. I usually avoid saying, it's going to be funny, or I promise you'll laugh or you'll like it. I usually don't say anything like that. I mean, I've seen that said, and that's fine if you say that, but I just go like, we're going to make up, create something based on an audience suggestion. And then when I get the suggestion, even if I don't want it, I still take it, because if you start to cherry pick suggestions, that doesn't work either, right? And some people do that. I mean, I think if you're going to do that, I have seen some very established teams do that, and I get it. They've been doing this long enough. But then you just let them know. Guys, throw out a few different suggestions. Let's hear them. What do you think? What are some places? And then someone says, a museum. Oh, that's cool. A museum. What else? What's something else? A park. Okay, great. What's another location that inspires you? A picnic table. Okay, I'll take picnic table. So you're rolling over museum and you're rolling over park, but you're not insulting them by going, museum, no thank you.
Yeah, not this time. We got it recently.
We did that last week. You should have been here. Yeah, dope.
So that's my first part that I want to mention is it's fun to show a little personality for the person who gets a suggestion. And then good reminder is you are on stage the entire time, especially if you're at a theater where there are no wings. So just try to stay engaged. And if there is something going on that's a little awkward, you don't have to let the audience read on your face that you are uncomfortable, because your teammates may pull right through that and make it the best scene you've ever seen. You really don't know. So let's not judge it from the back line, for goodness sakes.
To me, playing grounded, as I come at this, from an acting background first, is really about connection and these are going to be all cliches, but connection and staying in the moment and being really true to that moment versus, I feel like there's sort of two settings for us as players. There's that like looking for the bit, you know, like where's the game, you know, the head and the balls basically. And for me, grounded is playing from the balls and the guts, where it's like, you know, 10,000 bits can go by. It doesn't matter because I'm here in this place being kind of patient and really trying to build a foundation to work from. So
yeah, I think that grounded, it sounds like is more about playing from like an emotional acting place for like the reality of the character. Does it matter to you if it's like, or I guess like, how do you keep things grounded when it's like kind of in fantasy or sci-fi world, or like, you know what I mean?
I mean, look, whether you're writing or playing something that's already been written, you're coming from a base of a character that has a want and a set of feelings. And those can vary, but just constantly folding back into some of those basics will always keep you grounded. So if you catch yourself thinking like, oh, I could be saying something funny here, the audience really likes the other guy I'm on stage with better than they like me, you know, all those things that go through your head that pull you out of those moments, I think you just keep coming back to, who am I? What do I want? What am I feeling? You know, and I think that can be a grappling hook for you.
Yeah. Okay. So that, and I think that's super useful. I don't think I've ever really heard it framed that way, because grounded, usually I think about like what the kind of content or subject is, but like it seems like a really useful, it's also useful to be like, well, are you in your head or are you in the character? You know what I mean? Keeping yourself in the mindset of what the scene is feeling and doing. That's cool.
I think and that's when I think one of the things that's more challenging about improv than acting, and actors will roll their eyes at me, but you know, when I get shit from people who are actors, right, about going into improv and doing, you know, shows for beer money in front of a screen that people are trying to watch the hockey game. I'm like, there's a reason. Oh, hey, that's my assistant with the coffee. There's a reason why you're not doing this, and it's because it's harder and a little scarier. And part of that harder part is that we have this giant part of analysis going on in our head because we're playwriting while we're playing it. The last time I did an actual play, and it was already written, I was like, okay, we have this. Why do we have 4 weeks of rehearsal? The play is already written, right? What else are we going to do with all this time?
Yeah.
So I think, I don't remember where we started off, but the point is like, those same elements are the same, whether you're coming to a role from as an actor or an improviser. You can only really control the character and how they react and what they're feeling.
Yeah.
You know?
So internally, for me, I know when I'm out of it, when I side with the audience over my scene partner. And specifically, it's those times when like maybe your scene partner has said something that negated the scene, or maybe you've said something and you either do the literal take to the audience. It's like, we're on a team against this guy. Or it's like pointing out to the audience, hey, remember we're doing an improv show and we just made a mistake. Haha. Like, instead of embracing that as a total commitment and truth to the scene. And that's really hard to do, especially if it's like, man, I told you that it was nighttime and you just said the sun's really bright. Instead of going, we're on the planet whatever that has sun and night at the same time. Right?
Yeah.
And so like it's those moments, and it's so easy and so hard to do at the same time, because like and you constantly, and that, I think that's why improv is so great, because it's like you will have these amazing sets and not know why, and then you will have real shit sets and you're like, I feel like I know why, but I'm still not sure we can dissect it yet.
Yeah.
I also know that one of the things that James and I have like bonded over a little bit it's such like, I mean, this is an improv podcast, so this is something we bond over, is when people, I'm like nerding out hardcore on improv, but that's the point of it.
Welcome to the show.
Yeah, please. That's what we're here for. Heck yeah.
I feel like James and I get equally frustrated at the name thing. I call somebody James in a scene. He calls someone James in the scene. Somebody else calls him James in the scene. And then somebody's like, oh, what's Henry doing? Like that.
Oh, yeah.
Then you see my face. And then I'm thinking, like, how many ways can I figure out how to justify this? How to tell them that this is not the name? And then it just feels like amateur hour. And I hate it. I hate it.
That's a cousin to one of my biggest pet peeves. Like, if a female improviser comes out and like, hey kids, you wanna go see my I don't know, junkyard? Yes, Mom. You're like, what? Like, why? Oh, because she's a female. Like, no, she's playing a dude. She just scratched your balls. I don't know, man.
Also, don't name her. Like, that is another thing to me. That I thought that's so basic when they teach you walk-ons. If the person who's walking on has an idea, let them. They'll get their idea out. Don't worry.
Yeah. The cutoff, like someone walks on, and then they have this big present. Like, oh look, it's Frank. Like, yeah, I guess I'm Frank now. Shit.
I feel like it just cuts the wind out of so many people's sails so many times, and then it's just a bummer. And then the audience is looking at you like you're unprofessional. And these are like nitpicky things, but it's just annoying sometimes.
I always thought that being consistent is one of the hardest things. I think it's in Tina Fey's book where she was like, the best improvisers in the world succeed like 70% of the time. And I was always like, that's dead on. I think so. And I think I've witnessed a few of like the best improvisers in the country. And, that's about where they operate at, is like 70, 80%. So I think I think it's super, super important.
It's tough. I think that one thing that came to mind for me is inconsistency, and just thinking about that angle on it of consistency in your performance from show to show as an individual. I mean, there's the troupe consistency too, but as an individual performer, I was thinking about like, man, really a big part of that is also kind of narrowing down the things that you choose to perform in, or who you want to play with. You should obviously be able to play with anybody and have fun with anybody, any other improviser. That's a major part of like being an improviser and belonging to a community. But at the same time, like, how much of it do you guys think is, about kind of whittling down what you're choosing to spend your time on, and what feeds into your style and the things you want to do, the things you have fun with, and the things you're good at?
I think you just said the key right there, James, at the last part, is like the fun part. I know that I personally have met so many improvisers that you can't question their love of improv, but they're almost doing improv too much to where I think they suffer. And then the consistency just kind of dips because of exhaustion. And I always say there's lack of butterflies in your stomach. If you're doing it all the time and it feels like a chore, man, I just don't know how you can be successful being in that state of mind going on stage. I think a lot of the consistency is wanting to do improv rather than like, I have a show tonight. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Well, and to piggyback on that, like we're talking about the 30% of the time you have those lulls. Can be, if you're performing so much, you're not going out and living life. So what are you bringing to the stage? What kind of life experience? You can only go back to the year before, or whenever you started like doing your run of improv every night, because then all you're doing is waking up, having dinner, then going to do some more improv. Like, and you can't talk about improv while you're doing improv, so it kind of burns you out.
Yeah, I used to get burned out, and it would just be like, you start a scene and someone's you're typing in an office. And I remember just having that thought in the improv scene of like, I don't want to be in this, like, I don't want to be typing, and this is fake. You start to just be like, this is not, your heart's not into it. So like, I would just like that was always my worst habit, is like if I wasn't into it, I would play in the scenes, but it would just all be like, meh, man, who cares? And once I'm going into the who cares, well, I'm not improvising at that point.
Yeah.
So, consistency to me is always like, it's so much just not even being on stage as much as it is like just taking care of yourself off stage. Make sure you have enough sleep. How many improvisers do we know that just don't sleep? They're like vampires.
Yeah.
I knew so many people that just like, I was one of them, just not taking care of ourselves. And it's just like, then you're just like trudging your ass on stage. And it's like, oh boy, that's not going to be consistent. It's like being an athlete.
Yeah.
You got to stay.
Yeah.
shape,
I mean, another word for consistency can be balance. You have to have that balance in your life. Yeah.
Right. And you said it, Bob, like if you're not out there living a full life and just improvising, boy, you are just getting into the weirdest improv habits at that point. And it's, I think it makes for a bad improviser. I've always heard we've all met some of the best improvisers in the country, and every time they talk about improv, I feel like they just don't really care that much. And it's like they don't.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? They like love
No,
it.
I know
but,
that
like,
tone.
They're not,
yeah.
Yeah, they're just not. They don't hold it so tightly, white knuckled. So.
And speaking of workshops, the topic for this episode is on mindfulness, which is a topic that, Ken, you've been running the workshop on with Bad Dog Theater. For how long did you say you've been doing that? For a while, right?
I think just it's over a year now. It was like a year last, I think around May or so, that I had an opportunity to put this together, and I love it. Improv and mindfulness, I think, go hand in hand, or like good improv, involves a lot of mindfulness, being in the moment. And it's interesting of how often, especially as improvisers, we don't spend in the moment. We're often kind of thinking like a few steps ahead,
right?
Like, what's the game of the scene? Like, what are the other moves and such? But I know, again, like playing with Isaac, for example, in Two Man No Show, I'm like, my most favorite moments are where me and Isaac are so connected, so in the moment, connected with our audience as well, and just in that state of play. But there's actually a lot of work that goes into how do we show up to be at ease and to have that accessibility to playfulness and such. Because I grew up, I don't know about you guys, but I grew up with a ton of self-consciousness and fear and nerves and anxiety into the world. And it was only when I was about 30 or so that I jumped into improv classes for the first time. So it was like, it's such a strange environment to live with such negative thoughts and negative feelings for your whole life. And then to experience this oasis of improv, which is like, no, we accept you as you are. And the more that you are in the moment, the more you're helping the collaboration, the more you're helping the scenes, the dynamic, the ensemble, all that kind of stuff. So it's been a real catharsis for me to find improv, to discover improv, and the joys of the moment, because it reinforces. It's like the repetition of doing improv reinforces being mindful and to let go of like, no, I want the scene to go this way. No, it's like, but this is what's happening. This is the reality.
Fighting what's happening.
Want all you want. Here we are.
I'll wait for the next offer. Thank you. I'll wait for the next offer, a better offer. Not so much. That's why it's so fun to play with Isaac, because no matter what we do, it's like there's such a wholeheartedness, acceptance of the moment. And we, as both of you can attest, we love to go absurd. I mean, we don't have to, but we often do. And because it's just fun, and it's just so much fun and playful. But again, it's like we got to push through a lot of that negative self-talk and all that messaging and conditioning that we've had throughout our lives. And adults, I think, come to improv almost like very on edge and very fixed minds, like, am I doing it right? Am I doing it right? Where it's like,
right.
Play, man, just play, kids, like they don't think about, are they playing it right? No. Are you playing pretend right?
Can you describe how you make choices about how to explore something that is drawing you to it? Because you can make it more simple, like the finger example, or you can make things more complicated, like the Cook County example. And it's like, how do you kind of like follow? Like, is there a way that's consistent in the way that you follow those moments?
I think so. And by the way, I think we all should be working both sides. Like even when I teach, there's an exercise I do where I have someone come out and try to give like the world's greatest monologue. You know, like I want you to come out and no bullshit. I want you to come out and you're going to win an Oscar for this monologue, right? However, if you start losing the audience, you can do whatever you have to get them interested again. But then you have to go back to this monologue, right? You can do anything you want. You know, you'd be like, nay, 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 woo. And as long as they're looking at you again, you could then be like, what is this failure of man and man's gift? Like, so like to me, like this spectrum, like I can't stress enough that even though I talk about silliness and stupidity, I am in a constant search for beauty.
And then Ken and I, to answer your question properly, it's no. The show was never written.
Okay.
When we started touring without our director, Mark, it was very difficult and the show changed. And we went through a lot of stress and challenges with the show on tour because the show truly was a clown show. And to me, what that means in this sense is that it was never written down. We knew our beats. I later learned, like in Commedia dell'arte, they're called like, there's something called lazzis. Like a lazzi is a comedic beat that you hit. So we had these beats. We had the order of the show. Mark is a brilliant tech guy. I don't know. He has probably a degree in tech or something. He's a master. So he would follow us. He would cue sounds. He'd put the music and the lights. He knew what had to happen. We knew the beats we had to hit. Things can change within it. We can improvise. We can feel the moment. We can play with something and let it go a bit if we need to with the audience, listen to what the audience wants. But we know the beats of the show. You know, we even got so far as we ran it for the first time the night before we opened, and we were 10 minutes short. We had like a 40-minute show. So we thought of the idea like, well, why don't we pretend that we had mics on, leave the stage. We've already done our multiple bows, and then we go on actual mics on the side and just start chatting from behind the curtain, breathing really heavy, being like, great show, man. Yeah, you too. Oh man, you see that? Like, man, she's pretty hot in the first. You see that girl? Like, so we're just saying stuff, and some people that was a favorite part because the show would never end. They just didn't know if they could leave or not. One guy got mad at us and said, like, he stood up and said, "You can leave. The show's over. You're allowed to go." So, James, to answer your question, we never wrote the show down, and it was very difficult.
That's awesome.
After the summer of 2009, toured because I had to write. Touring is very hard. My heart goes out to everybody who's toured. It's a very difficult thing, and the first time for Ken and I, Ken had a job, so I had to tech the show without him sometimes. I had to give it to tech people who weren't our directors, so I had to write our show down, and the show changed because once you start putting in somebody following a direction, they're not truly playing with us, you know. And Mark was a third performer in the show, and you know, it's a big thing. So really, it's like, well, how do you create a show that allows that kind of fluidity? Maybe the answer is the director they got to come with you. They got to be the person, maybe, and that's hard. It's a lot of money.
So yeah, let's talk about edits. I think we can talk about the things that come to mind for me on the subject of edits. We can talk about editing as a skill because it's kind of like being tone deaf for some people. Some people really struggle with like the right moments to edit or just training that feeling. And we can also talk about how useful they can be in just the success of a show. I'm also thinking about different types of edits and things that are underutilized. I think there's a lot of really fun edits that could go into pretty much any type of show and don't get used a whole lot. Edits can also go a long way to just kind of theming or giving your show an aesthetic. If you are doing a form, you know, they can just be really useful to shape a show and to stylize a show.
Depending on the style of edit, it can also be used to like boost the energy of the set.
Yeah, pacing is huge, and edits and Yeah, I don't know if this is kind of what you had in mind, Pete, but one of the things, different types of edits, editing at a peak or editing at a lull. It's easy, on a big laugh or applause, to be like, there it is, and then run for it. But sometimes a scene is just full of either, maybe it's full of tension that isn't getting like a sharp laugh or conclusion point, or if the show isn't going that well or the scene isn't going that well, you can kind of take a lower energy point and seamlessly move on to the next thing without having it be like a run of shame in a sweep edit across the stage where you're just like, fuck, dude, sorry guys, here we go to the next one.
I'm always a fan of when the scene is bombing so bad and the person gets a laugh from the edit because everyone was like, yep, absolutely right.
Yep, we all saw that train wreck.
Yeah.
Oops.
I also saw, I think it was you two and Jen Hansen that did, it might have just been the three of you do a set called Robot Chicken. Do you guys remember that?
Oh, when we did all the edits?
Yeah, I think that your form or your goal.
What did we do?
You did a show called Robot Chicken.
Yep.
Okay.
And it seemed to me as an audience member, and then correct me if I'm wrong, Bob, that your goal was to pull out like every type of edit and scene and show
Correct.
element, and just go through the checklist from the top of the show to the bottom of the show. So there's a lot of crazy edits in that from you guys.
Oh God, I don't remember that at all.
I think we were kind of thrown together at the last minute. Like it was like a proving ground set or something. And they're like, we need a third group. And the three of us was like, let's do it. And then we were backstage and we were trying to discuss like, what am I gonna do? We don't want to just do a montage, just do something crazy. And I forgot who said it, but it was like, why don't we just do all the edits? And then we laughed, agreed.
Job.
But
why does that
really
sound?
agree.
That sounds like most forms that I've come up with. Well, let's do this. Okay, yeah, all right, cool.
Yeah.
Yeah, why not?
That's
For that kind of
interesting
stuff, but-
because that's so interesting because there was an article, and I can like put in the links or whatever later, but it was on Variety, and this woman wrote about in the news stories after that mass shooting happened. It was, I think, 6 Asian women were killed. The people in the comments were like making these horrible jokes, and stuff like that, where like you think that we would also face that too, where these horrible jokes would come in and it'd be more trolling going on, but there's trolling going on in these like very serious, horrible situations.
Yeah.
Yeah. And like,
I guess that is
that?
really like, that's where trolls would have their most fun, right? Is something
Right.
that should be taken seriously, not probably not at a comedy show where they're like, yeah, that's already kind of the tone anyway. So yeah, it's terrible. And I'm glad that it's not as spilling into the improv world. It seems generally fairly supportive, especially from the audience comments and whatnot. But it just sucks to see that stuff anywhere. And what are some of like the most when you see this type of humor? Let's define it first. Like you're talking about, you mentioned specifically sexism and chauvinistic remarks being the type of jokes. But you're talking more about destructive humor that could be about any sort of discrimination or pejorative joking?
Yes. I just kind of addressed it to the comedy scene because it's happening within the scene too. But I addressed it to the comedy scene because I think we think about jokes a little bit more in the construction of jokes and our intention. And whether it's stand-up or improv or sketches, we think about this a little bit more. So when I see it happening within our community, I get a little bit more irritated by it. Where like, so that Tim Robinson sketch, I don't know if you're going to talk about it, but I don't know if I should break that sketch down right now.
Absolutely.
Basically, so from I Think You Should Leave, I've watched it over and over. Obviously, I think we all have, especially during the pandemic.
Right.
But there's a scene where he's in a work meeting and he goes and sits down and he sits on a whoopee cushion and all the coworkers crack up and it's like a joke. But and then he rightfully so gets into this like bit about like, what's the joke here that I have a slightly milder fart than no one barfed, or like it's something like
Right.
like what's the joke? And it's a hilarious way of looking at that. But I kind of felt like that what's the joke, like asking people in those situations, that's a good way of kind of getting down to the core of what was going on. And especially like during the pandemic, some of my friends who are working in person dealing with their coworkers, making jokes about how they're taking precautions or these serious things that make people really anxious. And it's like, what's the joke here that you're making fun of me for being conscious about the pandemic and not wanting continuing to the spread of this and like people's lives? What's the joke? So I think that that's kind of like the root of my post that I was making, that looking at when you're in the situation with people, that you could use that in the moment. Because I think that's the thing, is we struggle with recognizing something, but then what do we do in the moment when we do recognize it? And I think that little line sometimes helps me kind of look at it to more directly. Yeah.
Correct me if I'm wrong, but I feel like basically we're asking, A, what's your intent, and why is that your intent? So was your intent to break the ice, or, you know, make something uncomfortable, you know, get levity? Or is it, hey, I feel uncomfortable, so I'm just going to react in some kind of weird way? Or, you know, are you trying to comfort yourself? Are you trying to comfort us? Or are you just trying to be shitty?
Right.
I think
yeah. Sorry, go ahead.
Or I was just gonna say, or do you not know what to say, so you're just basically making a "that's what she said" joke, because you can't add to the conversation.
And then that's the thing there too. It's like, if we can't add to the conversation, that's okay. You gotta be just like comfortable with your silence sometimes, and you just take up space to take up space, or to just show dominance, or just show that you're still here and you're relevant and you want to be funny still. Yeah, I think that, and I want to come from a place that I've been guilty of this too, and that I'm not saying like everybody needs to listen up. I'm taking it to the streets, but
that's weird. Your Molly impersonation sounds just like mine. I'm always like, have you heard Molly talk? I'm Molly.
Point my finger at people. But
I like when you point your finger at people. It's not even aggressive. You're pointing up.
Wiggle.
Like,
It's a slow wiggle. Yeah.
That's how nice you are.
Well, it's interesting because even through this whole COVID debacle, my definition of risk keeps evolving. You know, like now that we play with people from the, you know, privacy and comfort of their own homes, being risky as an improviser or clown is totally different than being in front of a live audience. And, you know, I keep distilling it. I guess, you know, what I've kind of been thinking about a lot, and I've been teaching quite a bit this year, is risk in relation to danger. And so for me, risk is when there's something at stake for the performer. Mm-hmm. And danger is when that threat extends to the audience. You know, so, you know, I think risk is probably much more what you're going to deal with when you have a fourth wall. And then danger is also something that's going to creep its way in if you have no fourth wall and you're directly interacting with the audience. But it's just this idea that there can be victory or failure. There can be embarrassment. There can be glory. You know, risk has two sides. You take a big risk and it pays off and you're a star, and you take a big risk and it flops, then you get to enjoy sort of this failure in front of the audience. And I do think it's one of those things that is so misunderstood, you know, and I think especially this year as we deal with like, you know, Black Lives Matter and, you know, kind of this resurgence of Me Too and like politically incorrect comedy, that there's sometimes this feeling that risk means, oh, I'm going to just say something outrageous, or I'm going to, you know, do something that's politically incorrect. And in fact, like, you have to kind of think about that behavior through this sort of metric of what's at risk for you.
All right.
Mm-hmm. Right? Like, what's at risk for you? So if you go out there and you say something and you're relatively unaffected by it, or your life is unaffected by it, then is that a risk, or is that actually danger? Because now you've put the audience in a position where it's their discomfort and them dealing with the consequences, being the silent observer to your performance.
Yeah,
you know,
that's a good.
And like, this is all stuff that really has kind of shown more now that we're reinventing how we improvise because of all these restrictions, you know?
Yeah, that's a really great distinguishing. Like, is it a risk for you? Because I mean, also, if you feel uncomfortable saying offensive things, it doesn't necessarily mean that that's your answer of how to take risk. But a lot of people,
that's an excellent point. Yeah,
a lot of people who are interested in like edgy or risky things, I think that's maybe what you're pointing to, is that people associate it with like taboo content that they're comfortable with, but that other people aren't. And I love kind of pointing to like risk has that vulnerability and fear for you as a performer about exploring things that are difficult or challenging, and not necessarily ambushing the audience or blindsiding the audience with like, bam.
Right.
This. That's
I tricked you. You thought you were going to see a comedy show, but I'm going to say a racial slur.
Yeah,
and
now you
because
have to
I'm on
decide what kind of
stage,
person you are. Yeah.
Yeah.
You have to decide if
I'm
you're gonna
safe.
say anything.
I'm on stage. Yeah, I'm raised. I got a big light on me. There's security.
Yeah.
There's no consequence.
And you know, that also speaks to status. You know, like I think when you start to do clown work, you realize that, you know, the person who's on stage with all the lights on them, often even in a raised position from the people watching, there's inherent status there. You know, these people have come to see you. You know, you did not come to see them. And so often, because we're dealing with our own fears and just our insecurities, we're like, oh my God, what a risk going out on stage. And it's like, well, like this is actually a platform of power, you know, and what we do. And so how do we as performers get ourselves in trouble? You know, that's a term we use in clown a lot. Like, what can we do to sort of sacrifice that status that we have naturally? And I think with improv, it for a long time was assumed it's like, but they know we're going out with nothing. And it's like, yeah, but we also now have like 50 years of like tricks and tools and trades, and half the people out there are my friends, and like there's so many other things. So, you know, for me personally as a performer, my interest is like trying to achieve something big and like dealing with the failure that comes with that. That's my main source of risk, is something ambitious, you know. And it doesn't necessarily mean like a costumed Shakespeare show. I wish I could pull that stuff off. I cannot.
Right.
But, you know, coming out and sort of with a really dumb idea, or like coming out really getting behind something that I think the audience is going to be like, this is, you know, you've chosen unwisely. Then I feel like, all right, now I have to really work. How am I going to make this a victory? Or can I enjoy the failure of it with this audience? You know, together, can we sort of enjoy the fact that I'm, you know, knee deep in this and I don't know how to escape, you know?
As I said, I've really been interested over the last few years, in particular, when I'm teaching improv or public speaking or clown or comedic acting, is to foster the play first, is to begin to like, what can you do to affect how you show up in the first place? And what is your mindset? And how does, because for me, I like to include the audience in my experience rather than try to sort of drive an agenda of this is what the scene's going to be about. For me, I just think it's more satisfying. And for me, and playing with Isaac, it also frees us up to play moments, which I see a lot of beginner improvisers are so bogged down in exposition that they lose the fun, you know. And that's what I'm saying. I'm like, I kind of, maybe it's just it's more of it coming at it from the path of least resistance, in the sense. I'm like, I want to honor both. You're absolutely right. I want to honor what my scene partner has said, but I want to bring my audience in. So they're almost like a third partner, a scene partner, their input, or their kind of like their immediate direction. They laugh or they don't laugh, or they're listening really intently, is information for me that I get to play with. It's another variable that I can help sculpt, because I know that feeling that I get when I get a laugh, especially early on in a set. And I'm like, oh, that means I can go even bigger, you know, like that means it's almost this thing of like giving me permission to explore even further. And I generally have more fun that way. And if I leave a set where I'm like, I had fun, I generally had fun, and not one of the sets where people come up to you afterwards and be like, did you have fun?
Oh,
yeah.
Are you okay?
Yeah. How are you?
Hard. Yeah.
Yeah, improv's hard.
I'll give you a good story. All right. Okay. I normally you'd have to have a few drinks in me for me to start storying, but here we go.
I'm so excited.
I was taking Second City, and I feel like I was taking all three at one time, or maybe I was taking IO and Annoyance pretty close to the same time. And we went in for the first day of level 2 at IO, and the instructor came in, and he right away said, you know, I'm just going to tell you guys right now, I'm the best improviser here in the entire class. Like, I'm better at improv than any of you guys. And then I went to my Annoyance class the next day, and the next day was like Joe Bill being like, man, just enjoy yourself and explore your own creativity and believe in yourself and trust in yourself. Do whatever the fuck you want. And it's like, you could not have a more contrasting style of philosophy, which is, you know, on one hand, and again, different strokes for different folks, but on one hand, IO was very much like, we've created a formula, let's plug into that particular formula. We've created a philosophy, let's plug into that philosophy. And the Annoyance was much more like, fuck it, what you got?
They're like
and that just appealed to me.
about, right?
Yeah. You know, all right, if you can play. You know, we're not about hierarchies, we're not about structures, although everything ends up with a hierarchy and a structure. But we're really more about like, let's just have fun. If we like being around each other, then let's be around each other and let's do creative things around each other. So all of a sudden, my creativity and my thought around improv went from, how do I comply with everything? You know, how do I kind of mold myself into the box they're looking to fit me into? And it flipped to, how do I just get out of my way so that I can let my creativity flow and get in touch with my, you know, my core of creativity. So
that's interesting, because like most Second City type learning experiences and students in those experiences do the same learning curve, but you happen to do it at the same time. Like you had like more of a Venn diagram than like a learning curve. Like, because I had the same thing, because you start taking these classes and, oh, here are the rules, no questions, no this, and you got this checklist in your head when you're trying to play. And how can you call that play when you got a checklist? You know, someone's telling you how to do the thing. So I like that. That's really cool.
Yeah, and, you know, to a certain extent, even teaching at Columbia, you know, which kind of forced me to get back in touch with, like, the Viola Spolin roots and that kind of stuff. Because, you know, I took over at Columbia College for Martin DeMott.
Oh, wow.
Who unfortunately had passed. He was sick and then passed away. And when he was sick, couldn't teach his classes, and they reached out to me, and they're like, hey, do you want to teach college? And I'm like, I guess. And so I really, you know, tried to honor Martin by kind of going back into the Spolin work. And when you look at all that early improv work, so much of it is just founded in pure play and, you know, just trying to take kids who are kind of messed up and not feeling like they can express themselves and just giving them the freedom to express themselves. You know, yes and was originally an exercise, not a rule.
Yes anding is only a suggestion. It's a good suggestion, but not the hard rule we always preach. So I thought that would be a good clip to leave us on. Just want to take a quick second to thank James for starting this. I want to thank all our guests who have been so awesome to give us our time and knowledge and experience. It's been an absolute pleasure. And to thank you for supporting us by clicking on every week and commenting and liking and sharing. It's all been really great. This whole thing has been wonderful, and we're just excited to keep on doing this. So thank you. Have a good week.